Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. I've got Jake Hamilton. He is the founder of Groundwire and Nockbox. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Let's start with the beginning. What is Groundwire and Knockbox?
Okay, Knockbox is a little easier. Knockbox is a mining company. We mine Knockchain, which is recently, it's about almost a year old now. Zero knowledge, useful proof of work blockchain that launched like spring of last year. And we founded it like right as the chain launched to mine. And we mined the first third party block, the first block not mined by the parent company, block 1123, which I'm very proud of. Um, yeah, and we just released our new fastest GPU miner. So exciting stuff. Groundwire is well, kind of like Bitcoin. There are different reference, like potentially for the term. So like one is that it's a nonprofit, the Groundwire Foundation, that we do Urbit core development, Bitcoin development, Bitcoin software development, and generally it's sort of Bitcoin centric. A Bitcoin centric Urbit development. So we do some like pure core Urbit development, like just on focused on performance and security. We do Noster integration, development, and our wallet. And our goal is to build a full node, like a performance secure Bitcoin full node implementation inside of Urbit, like over the next couple of years. So part of this whole thing, Groundwire is also a protocol. So like Urbit has historically used Ethereum for identity, like since like 2016 or so. Urbit identities are ERC-721 Ethereum NFTs. So Groundwire is a protocol for extending the ability, the PKI, to be able to use Bitcoin as well. And it's sort of it's a network soft fork, I guess. We're not like porting the existing system on Ethereum like over to Bitcoin. That's like marginally possible, though difficult. What we're doing instead is beyond like the Ethereum identities, the networking protocol allows for what are currently just ephemeral one-time identities that don't have the ability to like rotate their keys or attest the IP address that they can be found at. But we are extending the networking protocol with the ability for, they're called comets because they're seen once or whatever, to attest comets, to make them permanent anywhere, but we're doing it on Bitcoin.
So I want to go into the ZK proofs because I just did a really interesting podcast with a guy who's running Daniel Barr around Space Computer, and he's launching satellites with trusted execution environments (TEEs). And that interview was really interesting because he said that the ZK proof people, cryptography people, laugh at trusted execution environments because it's a physical solution to the same problem that ZK proofs, and so it's a less of a elegant or pure kind of like privacy solution. But I still don't know what a ZK proof is. I was at DevConnect a few months back, and that was really interesting because I got to speak right after Vitalik Buterin, and he was talking all about how Ethereum is upgrading its privacy. And he said ZK proofs, you can now create a ZK proof on your phone in 1 second. But I still don't know what a zero knowledge proof is. I've done a lot of interviews where we've talked about it, but can you, and for our listeners, it might be good because it is very, very niche. So far, might get much more important. What is a ZK proof?
Okay, so the easiest way to acquire a basic intuition is that like I can prove to you that I have, say, 10 numbers that add up to 1,000, right? Without you knowing what those 10 numbers are. And what that looks like is like I have like an adding program, right? And so I run the adding program on 10 numbers and it comes to the final result 1,000. And
Wow.
so all of the steps in the program ending with like the state 1,000, like like the trace of
Yeah.
that, so the recording of all the steps the piece of software went to can be transformed into a proof that a particular piece of software like went
Wow.
through these steps and ended up at this state. And validating that proof is fast, the proof is small, and it does not require you to necessarily have the input numbers. That's the idea.
Okay.
So the numbers case is not very interesting, right? Ever useful for anything. But like, say the program is an age verification program, right? And so instead of just like handing over my driver's license and my whole identity in order to prove that I'm over 18, instead you have a program that takes as input like a short video of me, pictures of the front and back of my license, and the current timestamp, and then it ends in a yes or no binary state. Is this person over 18 or not? And so
Hmm.
I could produce a proof of the process whereby it ended up at this yes or no answer and give you that proof instead. And so I could prove this. So if you believe the software, so it's like it's open source software, maybe if you're the government or something, maybe you made this software, like whatever, then you believe that I'm over 18 without needing to see my face and my license and stuff like that. That's the idea.
Great. That was
Um,
the first sort of understanding. So it's a program that you can prove without knowing all the data that the program uses. Is that right?
exactly.
Hmm.
And without needing to like also rerun the computation yourself.
Oh.
So this is like useful for privacy, but like it's also useful in contexts where like they say like the edge of a network needs to know something that like it would be difficult or costly or impossible to like get the requisite data to that edge because of bandwidth or compute over that data locally because of compute availability.
Yeah,
And so like
interesting.
being able to like having reusable computations is also like a
Reusable
significant use
content.
case.
Okay. Now, I would like to go into that's so interesting for me personally to consider whether governments will actually adopt this program. Because so far, I've been reading these, or I've been listening to this podcast called Black Box Governance. And Black Box Governance goes into how all of the governments, it's not, I mean, there probably is some sort of Machiavellian, like crazy thing to try to put us all into digital cattle for evil purposes. Like, I don't discount that that's actually happening. But after listening to this podcast, I think a lot of it is actually just governments trying to be as efficient as possible, like this efficiency mindset where we're just gonna make the police wear cameras and everything will be really efficient. And that's the reason for and there's actual industrial compliance matrix basically that is like it's there's also businesses involved, and so they're all doing this crazy stuff to like track everyone. Like a perfect example, maybe you interacted with it in Argentina, is the DNI, this number that you need in order to live in Argentina, which I don't think actually like exists in one centralized database in Argentine government, although they might be working on it now. It's just like a number that they put there because someone said like, well, you got to have a number for every person because that's the way that we do things, and it's just horribly ridiculous. And like you go to the stores, I'm sorry, I'm going quite a rant here, but you go to the
Yeah, you're good.
stores and, and the stores they ask for your DNI, but there's no centralized database. There's no reason that they need your DNI, and so they ask me for my passport number or my driver's license number,
Hmm.
and it doesn't go anywhere. It's like and so that's the sort of like the reason we're ending up like, and I think COVID actually could be explained a lot. Like I think there was some really gnarly evil stuff that happened during COVID for very like ridiculous reasons, but I think a lot of it was just like a government just trying to find the perfect ideal of efficiency and crushing people's lives to do this. And so I wonder, are they going to use ZK proofs, or is the government itself going to just like change significantly because of the nation state, and we're ending up in something else? And does that something else require the ZK proofs?
Yeah. So to the point about government motivations. So like my theory, like to some extent, like confirmed like anecdotally and talking to people, is that there are three inputs to all of the like facial and age and ID verification kind of stuff that we've been seeing. Like I call it KYCing like the internet or KYCing everything, over the last like 18 months especially.
Yep.
And like one is like they actually like, they didn't want you to have no privacy, like at least in the last instance. They want to have like a giant panopticon where they can track everybody. This like does it definitely describe like many people in various governments. Then there's exactly what you're saying. Like if you're at the border, at the US border, right, which I like cross constantly, and so I get to see like the evolution of what they're doing. like in nearly real time. But like so now like you know if you're in Houston, um, they route everybody through face scanner
Yep.
first, and now
Mm.
like a third of us or something like alarm like you know I don't know it doesn't work, and so they send you through a regular checkpoint. But the reason they're doing that is because if you spend time going through the U.S. border, like you know, it's a fucking disaster. The passport system was supposed to be a temporary measure
Yeah.
introduced in World War One to manage the flow of war refugees between European countries. But it's like, oh yeah, I mean, obviously, like stamps in a little book is a stupid way to even in 19 fucking 17
Yeah.
they did this. This is a
Yeah.
stupid way to do things.
Interesting.
We'll fix it later. 100 years, over 100 years
Yeah.
later, we're still using it. It's like, you know, different Mexican embassies in the US like get to make up their own extra rules for applying for permanent residency in Mexico, which I did not find out. And you basically have to be local to whichever embassy it is, depending on what their like rules are. I mean, this like system is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is a
Yeah.
lot of this just like we need to like fix this and make it more efficient. And then the third thing is like I think there are like people my this is like a theory, but I have my theory is that like there are genuinely people who like they don't want children like to be exposed to porn, which like I
Mm,
support,
yes.
like
Interesting.
you know,
Yeah.
but like if they knew that it was possible or if we made it possible for them, like would want to do that without like destroying the privacy of their citizens
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
taking on the liability of leaking data to hackers and like all of the stuff that you know that is bad about mass harvesting identity information.
Yeah.
So my hope is that so the first and third groups, right? The you know basically the evil people
Yeah.
and the like have good intentions,
Yeah.
but but it's playing into evil, you know,
Yeah.
bad people's hands.
Yeah.
People can be kind of like levered apart, distinguished from each other. They people there that certainly people who don't know there is not a fact of the matter yet which group they are in because like it's very new that it's even possible to do something like this.
Yes.
Um,
Interesting.
and so we can create that scission like by introducing the technology and pitching it as this use case. So that's like part of my motivation for like being involved in it is the larger ultra structural like political effects that you're talking about. And I think there is not current like the future is not set. Like
Yeah.
there are multiple ways this could go. I know that the EU I believe is pursuing a ZK
Wow. Okay.
identity verification program of some kind. I mean, a little skeptical of their ability to execute
Yeah.
on that, but like we'll see. I have spoken to people in the UK who were pretty jazzed about this being possible, like people kind of close to, you know, the Reform Party, like just sort of in politics, who were pretty jazzed about this being possible because they're, I guess, like they're back to the drawing board on
Hmm.
national digital ID. I forget exactly why, but I don't know. It's like they need to like start over again, and there's like some room for competing plans as to what to do. And then you know, my hope is like in Texas, for example, that um, there are people who genuinely they are trying to protect children, but especially if you tell them that it's like it's kind of like these you know, their enemies are like the swamp, right? And it's like it's the swamp that is trying to capture everybody's identities or large parts of the swamp like want explicitly want this. And so if it's sort of like, you know, your indiscriminate method of verification is like not just like it's not just that it's violating privacy and that in principle is bad, but like specifically it is feeding like the entity which is your sort of like structural or political enemy. And I'm hoping that at some point down the line that people in places like Texas and Florida, Alabama, I forget, you know, which of exactly of the states have like started to introduce this stuff, like that some of those like will be responsive to this. Whereas like California, I feel pretty sure they're part of the swamp telos of verification.
Yeah.
So we'll
It's,
see how that pans out. But you know, I think also, you know, there's like a larger story here to me that involves this where, you know, like the reason I'm part of the reason I'm in El Salvador is because it's this sort of like dual nation state network state where like it turns out those things are not as disjoint as we
Yeah.
always kind of figured that they would be. And like especially with, what the Trump administration is doing, like, like Venezuela and so on, like consolidating like the Western Hemisphere pole, like the Don Roe doctrine. That there's maybe
Was that a funny way to say it? What did you say?
no, he said that. He said that. We're calling it the Don Roe doctrine now. Like,
Don Rowe doctrine. Oh no. Okay,
dude,
not
he's just
that slipped.
banger after banger. Like, yeah. But there's this like there's kind of this opportunity where, you know, we can build this sort of proto network state archipelago, and like maybe it's like friend like I mean certainly in El Salvador, like, we don't like it's questionable if we even need like an embedded like separate micro jurisdiction. Like it might be useful for some regulatory experimentation purposes, but like basically the country is a place that's like friendly to regulatory experimentation, like, in a safe, secure, like well-run kind of context. And so there's this maybe an opportunity for this to be at least somewhat true of like new, administrations like in the North Atlantic and with the US too, where like maybe we can piggyback like on some of this like consolidation and reshuffling of politics that's going on to have like, like we should have a charter city in Venezuela. And like, and it should be pretty friendly with the US. I mean, Prospera was only saved from the previous Honduran administration because a couple of US senators were like, our
Whoa.
donors have invested like $100 million into this place. Like, well, it was that, and they would have had to pull out of what's it called? ITARP, the International Arbitration Court, and China was like, no, no,
Interesting.
no, you can't do that.
Whoa.
And so there is this like the process of network state formation, like dovetailing in various ways with, but then it's like, we build this, and then if things go the wrong way with nation states, like, okay, now we've also built an underground railroad, right? We have like an alternative structure, and like, yeah, my thought is that we want to be prepared for all of these futures because like anybody who tells you that they know which one it's going to be is full of shit.
There's no way. It's such a giant multifactorial problem after, and it's like really important what I'm about to say. It's after like 60 years, 70 years of like of a not very multifactorial, and my personal vendetta for the past week as I've been dealing with the permitting, local permitting government in California, is that the boomers are completely unprepared for a multivariate problem. Yet they will not cede control to the next generation, and that is a really important problem because like it is about to get really multifactorial in all these different ways. Like I have so much fun just studying what's happened in the past 10 years because it's like
Mm-hmm.
trying to map that to history. And like 1914, a similar thing happened. Like in 1914 was a similar time period where shit just got really real really quickly, and it took us until today to really understand. If you think about it, it's like I guess 1913 is really where it started. You have 1913 with the Fed, just researching it today, the ICSS, the International Court for Settlements in Zurich with Switzerland, basically doing all the money stuff, and then the Fed in 1913, and then 1914 is when the war starts out, and then just like step after step, and then 1929, and then World War II, and all these different things. We're right there, except much much crazier because we have technology coming in. And technology,
Right.
I agree with you that it's like there are so many options and there are so many loopholes, and I don't think there's any way that the panopticon will win. Like I think that it's just a matter of time. Like that whole, it was so interesting because like March 2020, it's like, oh shit, they have a lot of power, but now after 6 years, it's like, oh, actually that was their sign that they're actually weak, was that they needed to put that much control into the system. And now ever since 2021 or 2022, when the vax mandates failed, it's like it's just been one weakening after another. But I do think that there is going to be more of that sort of like weak control of a viper who's caught and is just like eating out. And so I
Yeah,
feel like we have to
they
stay away.
really fucked up
Yeah.
with COVID. I
Yeah.
mean, like the scale of like burning trust,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like trust and assumption of control and expertise and so on, like on a bonfire,
Yeah.
is like I would wonder if it's like if it has any parallel in human history.
Yeah.
Like honestly,
Interesting. I don't think
of
it
like
does.
so many institutions in so many ways, like so punctually, like basically like losing half the population's or more's like entirety
Yeah.
of trust and belief. Like that's just, especially coming from like the boomer half century of this, like oh, like, well, Dan Rather said it, so like obviously, like I mean, Obama, like
Yeah.
he says it, and like it's just true,
Got to be true.
and then it's just like bang, and
Yeah.
I think we're only at the beginning of the impact of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then on
Yeah.
top of that, like we get like AI, which is like, I mean, obviously, like people like you and I like think and talk, and like, and people who are in the sphere think about this as the Hydra that it is. But I think that like most of the public discourse tends to be about like just about AI itself, like, which is
Hmm.
reasonable. It is a big thing, like like how many jobs are going to be lost, like is it safe, like which
Hmm.
governments have it, like blah 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 blah. But then there's also like, biotech takeoff enabled by AI
Yeah.
is going like, and every tech takeoff like enabled by AI. I mean,
Yep.
I just saw a biotech AI demo that blew me out of the fucking water, and like it's going to change everything. And the
Yeah.
rate limiting factor, almost the entire rate limiting factor, is really just like regulatory, and
Yeah.
then the sort of surrounding like this like sociocultural issue of
Yeah.
like the people, like the regulatory like cannot change or adapt very fast, in part because of lack of generational turnover, and in part because that's just the nature of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it's a thing where the rate at which we get like regrowing people's arms if they get chopped
Hmm.
off, like to actually start like happening and be available, like 80% of the gap between here and there will just be like being allowed to do it.
Hmm.
I mean, like that, it's that kind of thing, but for practically everything. And so
Yeah.
like managing all of that, like I mean, it is basically
There is
just
no management.
unmanageable.
There is no control.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
control and
right.
management are
But
not
even
part of what.
mentally
Yeah.
managing,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
world model now?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's 2032, and like, what is the world model for not just for boomers, but normies, like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
anybody,
Interesting.
like, I mean, us, like, I like I have to work with AI just to like manage my like an exocortex is like non-negotiable
Yes. Interesting.
basically if you deal with a lot of this stuff on a regular basis, like as a technologist or an investor or whatever.
And the exocortex is what I'm building right now for my own personal thing. And I'm not even going to do it as a startup because I think so many people are going to need their own exocortex, and I can teach other people how to build their own exocortexes. But like, it's going to be so intimate that you have to build it yourself. I think. I don't think there's going to be a SaaS model, but maybe I'm thinking badly about that. But
No, I
the
agree. I definitely agree. It's a thing you have to grow and
oh,
like
I like that.
garden. And then there's the question of like, using like centralized models for it. So like, I mean, right
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm using centralized models, but at
yeah.
least like,
As soon as it comes
at least
out,
for
it's an
some
open source.
things, I have a bunch of disused compute at my house in Austin that I think I'm going to turn into a person like an R1 671B
Oh, interesting.
personal cluster. Um, yeah, because I mean, it's like it's not just like the privacy, and stuff. It's also like somebody was saying the other day. It's like, if Anthropic raises their prices for Claude
Yeah.
Code, like I'm fucked. And I was like, well, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, habituated
he
to
was
it.
like, I'm blowing six
Addiction.
grand a month on tokens, and
Yeah.
that's my entire workflow as an
Yes.
engineer now. And like, I could not sustain like a doubling of the token
Oh,
price of Claude Code. Like, I
man,
don't
if
know
they
what I
do
would
that,
do.
I'm now in the same boat too, because it's like now I got a contract paid yesterday, and so I was like immediately I'm gonna get the max or the $100 max subscription, and now I'm like entering that space of like dependency on this technology. In a way, I was already dependent, but I was like I knew that I couldn't go down that path, and now I'm going down that path. And there's a really interesting dependency. And also, I think the models are slowing down to the point, and I think they're limited on their data. So I think their actual data is now limited to the point where that and energy are now the bottlenecks. But even more than energy might be data, and high quality, good training data.
Like
Although,
training data. Yeah.
yeah, well, so I used to work in RLHF, reinforcement learning through human feedback.
Hmm.
And in the beginning, it was Scale AI and a few other companies, and those guys were essentially just body shops. So they kind of like used that period from 2022 to 2024 as a way to just like, outsource, automate really shitty quality and everything like that. But now we've run out of that data. We've run out of the internet data of like how do we actually get this into a pre-trained model using as many humans as possible. And now it's turning into boutique shops like Mercor, Surge AI, and Turing.ai. Those are the three leaders who are providing really high quality data. Turing, I've had an episode with one of the guys from Turing, and they're now putting um, video cameras on people's heads so that they can do live streaming, not for the internet, but live streaming for training these models so they can start to build world models and all these different things. And so that now that high quality data is the limiting factor, I think, for future progress in models. And that's really important for Claude because Claude did basically raise their prices in the past 6 months. They did it in a sneaky way where they released Opus 4.5 and are like, oh man, this great new model and stuff like that. But the only way you can realistically use it is with $100 or a $200 subscription. And there's been, and
Hmm.
I think all of them are stopping to basically be like, okay, we're going to release the next model. It's now continuous improvement, which is something else we could talk about, where it's like they're not going to
Yeah.
release models anymore. It'll just be Claude. They'll do the same pricing structure for SaaS in the model number with Sonnet 4.5 and Opus 4.5 or whatever that comes out next. But I think we're now at that point where they are starting to raise prices like very subtly. And
Hmm.
yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think a couple $100 is a steal for
Yes.
like
What's
what
good?
you know. I
What
mean,
is that? Yeah.
if you're able to get the kind of value out of it that's possible to get out of it, like if you know how, and you like either already have like a complicated life or are a coder or something, or like get on the flywheel of like, I can be higher agency and do more stuff and learn more things like because of AI, and then my life gets more complicated, and so
Yes.
like I need AI to help run it. And that whole kind of accelerative
The
personal
flywheel.
acceleration process.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
It's huge, but yeah, it's interesting like what the release model and the pricing model and so on for like continual learning is going to be, because that's like, I mean, that's
Whoa.
such a huge discontinuity, like compared to the history of the last like 3 or 4 years, how things have been both like in the nature, like the ontology of the model, like the world it lives in, and like the nature of its mind, in the way we use it and the way they release the things and like train, and also like the relevance of centralization of the models. So like the open source versus closed source like kind of question changes to continual learning. I mean, just all of that stuff. Like I think the next version of, well, I mean, they just they very successfully for the most part seem to have just like gotten off on the vacuuming up data and like not and ask for forgiveness on intellectual property later thing. But like the next one will be like personal data, and
Yes. Interesting.
like it should be, like for like the alpha schools in
Yep.
Texas, like the two-hour
Yep.
learning network,
Yep.
they charge those kids 60 grand a year, and they are harvesting one of the most valuable data
Whoa.
sets like
Whoa.
in the economy, and they're harvesting like an incredibly valuable data set from those people, and then they're charging them for the privilege as if they were like Duke undergrads. And I that is
Whoa.
cheesy at minimum. And it's not gonna like it cannot that cannot become like just the new standard that like nobody ever gets compensated for the value of their interaction with these systems, like especially when it's like continual training, continual learning, like I am like actively providing value like at all
Yes.
times.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there needs to be an explicit industrial societal negotiation conversation had about compensation for that and how that affects like pricing, and then also like obviously like in terms of privacy and like outcomes, like how it's done. And then part of that negotiation will be, well, I can do, okay, so maybe like a llama 7db maybe isn't that great, but a llama 7db that can continually learn on me might be a lot better, like for a lot of use cases. And I can do that on my Mac. I can do that at home. Like I don't need you for that. Fuck off.
Yeah.
And that's going to be like that's going to change like the balance of power, I think, between, centralized and open source models. And it's going to incentivize it too, because you would rather continuously learn in a private local way. And there's just like, I mean, remote private inference is really, really difficult. I mean, these things are like way too big, like to fit in a ZK circuit, and that will remain true for, the foreseeable, for a while to come. I mean, I expect AI to accelerate ZK algorithm development, same as everything else, but like, it's expensive, like to generate these computationally, to like generate these proofs. Like I know I have a friend who, he put a GAN inside a circuit on chain, but it's like, it's like a pixel art like kind of like level, like size image model. I mean, that's like the kind of size of AI that you could fit in toto inside of
Whoa.
a ZK circuit. So maybe there's ways of splitting the difference, like can you put some layers inside of a circuit? And I've talked a lot with people, I've like thought through options a fair amount, but like end of the day, like having like any kind of anything like what in crypto we expect out of trustlessness or privacy or whatever, with a model that
Mm,
is not trusted, is like
yeah.
is not local or run by your friend or something like that, is, limited, difficult, expensive, you know.
Man, you just convinced me that, I mean, I was already convinced, but now I'm very convinced that it's got to go local as soon as it's possible. And so let's think through that, because it's Claude Code I'm addicted to Claude Code right now, but I also know that Codex is there and Gemini 3 is there, and all of those guys are also competing in that market. And I also know that every time Claude Code releases a feature, Codex will pick it up, Gemini 3 will pick it up, and then Open Code will pick it up. And like, there's not too much time difference between the latest generation, and also mixed with what I was saying about like these models aren't getting that much better every time. The infrastructure around it is getting better, but that
Right.
infrastructure also seems really easy to reverse engineer and put inside an open source model. And then you've got China, the just like giant dragon in the corner of the room, just like pumping out open source models, including a whole bunch that happened this week that seem like they're getting close. I haven't used them yet, but now it's like, have you used them? Have you gotten into the Chinese open source models yet, and how they're?
Just a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I played around like with DeepSeek, like basically enough to convince myself that
Yeah. Okay.
when the time comes, like I'm gonna be happy like using like R1 full, like, locally, that it is like competitive, obviously, like, highly competitive, like more or less comparable, like with what Anthropic is putting out and OpenAI. But I've not like gone any deeper than that, really. Like I do follow along on Twitter, so like I pick, obviously. So like I was whatever, like it's like a few months ago, somebody doing like a comparison of like the self-concept, like the sort
Oh,
of implied self-concept of the personalities of different models, and like the
whoa.
way that like R1 like thinks of itself as a void. And like if you get it to
Oh,
like write metaphysical poetry like about yourself or about like consciousness or phenomenology or something, then it tends to like go for these like void oriented metaphors. I thought it was like very interesting that that's the case, like coming out of China, and like having like a more Chinese language heavy like trading corpus, that
mm,
it would like have this like it has a more deeply embedded like not no self like kind of concept. Like, yeah, just like interesting stuff like that. But that's all like I'm observing the discourse. I'm monitoring the situation as opposed
Yeah.
to so far like doing that investigation myself.
Okay, it's all
Yeah.
really interesting territory, but I would like to get back to ZK proofs and I mean we can talk about Groundwire as well, the nonprofit, and even Urbit or Bitcoin or all of the above. Um, well, actually, that's a good segue. What is the relationship between AI and all those technologies that I just rattle up, particularly with the ZK proofs? Like, okay, are ZK proofs going to solve the major issue? And I'll explain what I was thinking about earlier. Facebook now locked me out of my own account, and they want me to take a video selfie. And they say they're going to delete my account within 180 days. I've had the account for 20 years. I bought an Instagram subscription so I could talk to a live person to try to say, hey, like that's not happening. I'm not doing that. Please, is there any other way? Of course, that did not work. And so they want to harvest my biometrics. I already know that. I looked up all the court cases. Meta has done this many, many times, talk about untrustworthy. Man, I'm glad that they are losing to AI because they are not a trustworthy company. And so they're harvesting my biometrics for this privacy thing that we were talking about earlier of just like, oh, we're going to save the kids, blah, 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 blah. And also AI is coming down the pipeline. Well, what do you see a solution for ZK proofs and so that we can like prove that we're human when the
Yeah.
internet gets flooded?
Yeah. So I can't say too much detail
Uh,
about this because we haven't like done well, no, not about the topic in general, but like what I'm about to say is
yeah.
like Knockbox is, we're going into product like stuff that actually uses like Knockchain, and its capabilities. Like we're gonna at least like start moving on that, like play maybe a new company or something, like pretty soon, and like that a target area is like ZKKYC kind of stuff,
Whoa,
like
beautiful.
on online, but like obviously like online and like with private entities as opposed to like trying to deal with like make the SEC like change their or
Yeah.
something like change their or FinCEN like change their expectations, but like start with like I mean it's all with the current state of like what you can fit like feasibly inside of a circuit and like what you can feasibly like compute a proof for. Like you have to do just like a lot of just like aggressively like okay, what is the minimum pieces of information that we need to process in order to get like a secure like a result that is what it says it is. And then also like in terms of getting this technology, anybody to integrate this technology is like who wants to you know, like Pornhub, UK government, El Salvador, bank, who is willing? Who is like willing to like make this jump and who has the ability like in whatever regulatory framework they operate under, like who has the ability to do this, and is compelled by like the possibility, and then just like go from there. Like you just got to find just like one one or two such integrations to do, like one or two such areas, and like one or two things that you can prove that are actually useful, like about somebody's identity or reputation or whatever. And then you can start like proving the case and like get this flywheel going of like, hey, this works and it provides like tangible, benefits. You can use it in the real world. Yeah, I mean, you do this anywhere, and I think like for AI, okay, I mean, there's like different levels of this, right? Like, I mean, I think that with ZK, there's stuff related to people, but then there's also like securing the supply chain is something that I'm really interested in.
Ooh, cool.
With this kind of technology is, so that you're not, like when you buy a lot of supplements, like you're not buying
Yeah.
magnesium glycinate, you're buying a capsule with white powder in it. And
Yeah.
so like
Yeah. Yeah.
fortunately
Yeah.
Amazon has come to their senses and stopped the commingling thing that they were doing.
Whoa.
But like in general, this is a problem because basically like Ozempic, like GLPs have brought normies like into biohacking space and scammers have come to meet them. And so like the supply, the quality in the peptide market, in the gray market, like that I've been using for longer than Ozempic has been around, like has fallen off a cliff in the past 2 years. And so like, okay, so can we, and this is like where like actually there's I don't think there's a conflict really between ZK and secure enclaves, like because like if you want like you want to be able to believe that like when a device like measures,
Yeah.
the white powder and says like, no, this doesn't have arsenic in it. Yes, it's over 90% what it's supposed to be. You want to be able to export, you want to be able to believe that answer, those answers, and get those answers to something that can use them. Right? Like I want to be able like if it says that it does have arsenic in it, then I want to get it out to like everybody else, every
Yes,
retailer
interesting.
that stocks like this vendor, and I want to get that I want to get that information to them in a way that everybody along the whole line believes the answer. And for that, like, yeah, I mean, you use ZK, you use secure enclosures, you need open hardware, you need open software. This is like open source becomes like really like open source hardware and software becomes
Yeah,
like meaningful
interesting.
here because like I have to like to believe the
Right.
device. I got to know the specs of the device, right? And so yeah, so that's an aspect. And then right with AI, you know, again, it's like an even more extreme version of the like you got to figure out what you can fit inside of a circuit, a finite field circuit, like a circuit being like the thing that's in the prover, like what program you can get into this thing. And so like for the most part, it is like for like as AI usage like explodes and scales and like the models get bigger and blah blah blah, like it's mostly not the models themselves. Like maybe there's like some clever things you can do, but mostly it's like it's the tools that they use and then building the architecture of tool use in such a way that like if I believe certain things about the tools, that also tells me stuff. I believe stuff about how the AI is using them. Basically, I think that will end up being like a bulk of the approach of connecting them. And I think that Urbit also like this is a place where it like conjoining these things like it plays a big role because and like so this is part of the thesis with building like a Bitcoin full node from scratch like our own implementation alongside like Bitcoin Core is that like Unix is 3 million lines. Arvo is 30,000 lines, right? Like, I mean, that is like no one
Whoa.
person understands like the whole Unix kernel, and the people who understand parts of it really well, like like great are graybeards, like
Yeah.
are I don't know if they're like dying off
Yeah,
yet,
yeah,
but
they're
they're
close.
like they're on the
Yeah,
way to it,
yeah, yeah.
and it takes 10 years to like become so like you basically like apprentice and people don't want to do that because it doesn't pay very well to be a systems programmer working on Unix. And like this is a problem. And so like Urbit, is as we say, like tiny and diamond perfect is like the kind of is what we aim
Interesting.
for. Like it's Kelvin version code, so it's headed towards like, it is
Perfection.
built in that we are headed towards like ossification. It's deterministic,
Huh.
purely functional, strictly typed.
Interesting.
And so that like and it's meant for human readability and legibility, and so having that like in your toolbox or like central to it in various ways, um like yeah is can give us like more confidence in this like secure architecture for using different kinds of tools and using LLMs and using your identity and your data in a way that like a person can actually understand. Like we don't have to just like accept monthly hot patches from Microsoft for the
Yeah.
latest Windows security vulnerability for the rest of eternity. I mean, this is kind of like the founding idea. Part of one of the founding ideas of Urbit was like, what would like million-year old software, like a technological civilization that was 1 million years old, like what would the software be like? Because like I tell you, like if you're still getting hot patched every month for security vulnerabilities on your operating system, then like you're not making it to 1 million years. You're not making it to 1,000 years, right? And so like getting to a point where like you don't like the operating system kernel is in some sense is like a discoverable fact of nature. It can be gotten to a point where it does not ever have to change again. And so that means that you don't have like these centralized dependency, these like trusted dependencies, and this constant like I gotta accept, what if the Windows update comes with a fucking prompt injection?
Yeah.
That somebody gets in, like that person who was trying, like was it like a North Korean or something, who like almost like
Lazarus.
rooted every Unix system on Earth
Whoa.
and was caught by like by sheer dev autism. Like somebody noticed like that test should be passing. Like, what did you insert that one line of code for? And then kind of like unraveled the
I
whole
remember
thing.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's like,
yeah.
I mean, we, especially in this situation where we have an explosion of artificial agents like creating and using this stuff, like we we can't live like that. We used to say like we don't have to live like this, but like in the near future, we can't live like this.
Yeah, that's
And so
the
that's like a lot of my motivation. And yeah,
that's the craziest thing because it just feels like we're entering into such strange territory. I don't know if you saw the rent a human
yeah.
meme. So that's actually was done by a fellow here who's been playing polo with us down here.
Oh,
He
nice,
he's
dude.
in
That's
polo
all
series.
sick.
He was doing it on the phone up to polo a week ago, and then he released it right after he played. He's just like talking to his phone while he's building it. And he sent it to me. And I put a bounty on it today to go for somebody to go find our podcast episode that we had done like 3 years ago, and then tweet to him with something he learned. So my agent like did that all to go find them. And the reason I was bringing it up is because like he has a node package on his thing, and just knowing he's bringing all of the crypto scammers because he's going viral now, so like all of them are now attacking his project. And I was thinking about that, the node package and like all the ways that could go wrong. So inside of Docker, it was the
Yeah.
first time I put it inside of a
Or like
sandbox.
Claudebot, I think has a bunch of
Yeah,
security
yep,
vulnerabilities,
tons.
like, and it's just like, and people just like pile into this stuff, and, but like,
But it's totally insecure.
what happens? Like, what happens with that? Like, if it's not secure, if you can't know without like a whole iterative process of review, like whether it's secure on the back end, what security on the back end, do we even have like proper standards in this context for it?
So you're saying
You
that
know,
Urbit and ZK proofs allow for that. That's the architecture that
yeah,
can build that system.
yeah, like block, and then the like Knockchain and Bitcoin. Like Knockchain is my is one exception to like Bitcoin only, basically, in terms of like technical development, because I think it's a distinct use case, like basically like the thesis for doing ZK proving as the underlying work for Nakamoto consensus, like
Oh.
basically is like you want these proofs are like proofs of some fact, right? And
Hmm.
then you want like many such facts to all be co-available and globally available together so
Whoa.
that you can have some program which is gated on a set of these facts. Like, if a secure device in Colorado says the temperature is X, and if like this supply chain event happens, and if like some Cash App like program like says a proof of like fiat transfer, then like we do the thing, right? Like so, or that's kind of is like putting these truths, proofs, certainties like into a globally available and programmatically co-available to like contracts or
Wow.
or whatever programs.
Whoa.
That's kind of that's where we're going, is like a global like a global fact repository of like truth or certainty repository that has like a programmable way of depending on those predicates,
Cool.
those facts that we have, and say like this is what you do if like certain truths get proven about the world. Um, and so Knockchain, like Sorp did something really. I mean, they built a ZK prover that proves Knock programs, which was
Huh.
required a Herculean creative technical effort. Had to change things about, like implementation of Knock and also about ZK. And it turns out like Knock, just because of it, like its sort of simplicity and abstract and little tiny diamond perfect abstractions, like has some benefits for like speed and simplicity of ZK proof generation. Um, and so yeah, so there's tons of ways that all these things, and then like Bitcoin, so besides sound money, sound computing, sound politics is like sort of
Oh,
like
I like
sound
that.
world is like kind of my I don't know, my like kind of reference frame, but like so Bitcoin, besides like the sound money aspect, is like I'm not, nobody likes spam on Bitcoin. I'm not a fan of like random shitty JPEGs on Bitcoin, but I did, I was talking to somebody the other day, about a potential like a disclosure of something that it might be unsafe to like disclose. And it's like, okay, so there's like two ways, one of the ways that you can go about this is make it really, really public. So now there is no cover up incentive to like
Yeah.
have you whacked or blackmailed or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Interesting.
And how do you do that? Like you put it on Bitcoin
I got it.
because like it can withstand maybe probably like anything other than like an all-out nation state attack, and it goes out to 100,000 nodes, and once in a while like stuff like that, like this is a technology also for like really, really, really important and dangerous, like information that like should be made public, but it is dangerous for anyone to do so. Um, make it, that kind of like disclosure pattern. And there's use cases for that that are legitimate, that are not like JPEG, scamming bullshit, whatever. And that's so like anyway. So all just to say that there's like lots of ways that these things like ZK, Urbit, um, and or Knock, the Urbit ecosystem, and Bitcoin and these technologies like intersect to solve this problem. And I'm like trying to work on as many of them as possible, basically, or like and work on building the connections between those systems such that other people who figure out like now have available like Bitcoin and Knockchain can interoperate, like what problems like this can I solve using that combination that now exists. And so like the last thing that Groundwire is to me, is the place where all of these things cross paths, and the people who build like good connections between them so that they can all be used together to solve these kinds of problems.
So last question, is the ZK no, is Knockchain interoperable with Bitcoin, or is that what people are building right now?
Working on it. Working on
Okay.
it. We need so basically hashes that are fast in a ZK prover, and hashes that you would use anywhere else are kind of disjoint sets. So like this is so like SHA-256 and RIPEMD160 are the hash functions available on Bitcoin. Those are 10,000 times slower in a prover than tip5, which is the hash function available in Knockchain. And there is a solution to that. It just requires like basically I don't know, like a couple months of a very niche set of engineers time to be able to make like SHA-256 and RIPEMD available, in Knockchain programming. And I have a guy who you've met, Neil.
Oh,
I
cool.
don't know if it'll definitely end up being him working on that, but somebody's going to work on it, and he
He's
might.
exactly
Yeah,
the type of niche engineer I would imagine, who's also like a scholar in
scholar,
Desiree.
boxer,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
like
I love
man
it.
of like many and hidden talents.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
Oh, that's a good question. Fuck, I really should have gotten the website done like before getting on this
We'll publish it in a
conversation.
couple weeks so you can.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Groundwire.io.
Cool. Okay.
Groundwire.io. I'm still until we get the Bitcoin protocol out. I'm still Tonda Sitrime on Urbit. My Twitter is a long string of numbers that even if I said it, no one would remember. And you can email
We'll
me
put it
at
in the show
jake
notes.
at groundwire.io.
Jake at groundwire.io. So
Yeah.
groundwire.io. Thank you so much.
All right, cool.